Now of our conversation with Dale Arnold, who grew up in the town of Bowdoin and started broadcasting Brunswick High School football games when he was just 15 years old. He spent the next 5 decades doing play-by-play and discussing sports on talk radio, most of the time in Boston.
Dale Arnold is now retired and has moved back to Maine. We looked back on his remarkable broadcasting career at another of the places where it began, on the campus of Bowdoin College.
There are a lot of Patriots fans who are suffering this season. They're not used to this kind of performance from the team. You were broadcasting for the team in 1990.
88, 89, and 90.
What was the record that the Patriots had in 1990?
They were a lustrous 1-15.
It
wasn't my fault, by the way. I was not on it for any of those touchdowns against. But
you know, you have to call the game no matter what happens. But what is it like to be the announcer for a team that is so abysmal?
It's really bad, and it's hard. But I always would tell myself, you're not going to take a cut and pay. You're not going to say to people who own the radio station, look, pay me less, the team stinks. So you can't ease up on the effort and what you're doing.
The Patriots were just one chapter in a remarkable broadcasting career. Dale Arnold is the only person to do play-by-play for every one of Boston's major sports teams: the Patriots, Red Sox, Celtics, Bruins, and Revolution.
Part of that's fate, you know. I mean, how many guys are going to get to do Revolution soccer? And I got to do that for a season. So I cheat a little bit, but I did do the 5 pro teams, and I'm proud of the fact that nobody's ever done that before, and that I was the first one who got the chance to do it.
You were obviously enormously gifted at doing play-by-play, but then you got into sports talk radio and did that for a long, long time in Boston.
Texter says, guys, let's talk about Spikes being out so the Pats won't be able to stop the run. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but he's been playing on one leg for about a month now.
Did you enjoy that job?
For a long time, I did. I will admit that the last few years that I did it, you sensed a change in the genre. Much more bitter, much more angry, much more vitriolic. Got to have a hot take. You gotta yell at people. And I didn't enjoy it as much.
Let's talk about your new book, Tough Guys, which is about the enforcers in hockey whom you have known over the years. What attracted you to this topic?
I loved calling fights when I was doing hockey. And when I started, 79, 80, bench clearing brawls would happen 2-3 times a week. I also came to love the guys and talking to them. Terry O'Reilly, who was one of the scariest human beings in a hockey uniform who ever played the game, might be the kindest, gentlest, soft-spoken man I've ever met. And you'd never know that when you watched him play.
You're very clear in the book about how you liked watching fights in hockey. You weren't necessarily proud of it, but you enjoyed it.
Makes me a bad person.
However, you also acknowledge that what we have learned, certainly since you started out in the game, is the damage that is done by blows to the head and the lasting trauma that is caused. And one can't look at fights in hockey the same way anymore knowing that. How do you now look at it?
Totally differently. And I had begun a transition away from enjoying the fights as much. But over the course of writing the book, I really transitioned. You know, every one of these, now to a man, every guy in the book said, I knew what I signed up for, I knew what the job was, I don't regret it, I'd do it again. But they all kind of acknowledged that there's been a toll take. PJ Stock said to me, sometimes I'll ask my wife, do I not remember things because I'm getting old? Or do I not remember things because I've taken too many shots to the head? And he worries about that stuff.
In a broadcasting career that lasted half a century, Dale Arnold met famous people and called games and watched extraordinary athletes he could only have dreamed of when he started broadcasting at a radio station in Brunswick at the age of 15.
For so long in your career, you had to really pay attention to everything that was going on, certainly in a league, and then when you were doing talk radio, to everything that was going on with all Boston sports, all the teams. Do you watch a lot of sports now?
Not as much. I watch them now because I want to, not because I have to. And I will say this year, it's been very refreshing to not have to see the end of Patriots games.
What you did for so long was such a high energy, high adrenaline job. What is it like to be back in Maine back where you grew up and just be able to take it easy.
I relax a little bit more now. I read a lot more now, which I love. You know, my wife and I get an opportunity to hop in the car and let's go to Kennebunk today and look around down there. I'll tell you an interesting story. I grew up in Maine. You'd head up Route 1, and I never made the turn to go to Damariscotta. And I moved to Maine, and I went to Damariscotta for the first time, and I went, how the heck did I miss this all these years?
It's 50 minutes away.
It's like right there. And so we can do things like that now, you know, and we can go to Pemaquid and look at the lighthouse and do the things that I couldn't do when I was living here, but working for a living.
Everybody really does need to go to Damariscotta if you live in Maine and haven't been there yet. One of many places you need to go.
What a great guy. And all I can think about too, as he's talking about when the Patriots were really stinking as a team, I'm just thinking about my dad and being like, Dad, why are you so emotional about the Pats winning? And he would always say, like, you don't understand, man. Like, they used to be so bad.
Yeah.
But I loved his attitude. It's like, it doesn't matter if the team stinks. You can't stink too, so keep bringing your A game.
That's a great point. And we should also note that Dale Arnold was inducted this fall into the Maine Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame. That dinner was just a few months ago. He gave a wonderful speech, which is not the least bit surprising. The first part of our conversation with Dale Arnold aired last night on 207. We talked about his getting into radio in Brunswick as a teenager, then broadcasting Bowdoin College hockey, then his big break calling games for the original Maine Mariners.
If you missed that part of the interview, you can find it in the 207 section of our app or website.